Galactic Council. Astonished humanity marched to War Part 1. The summons. The great chamber of the Galactic Council floated in the darkness of space above Desert Prime. It was a massive station built from metals that did not exist on Earth. Inside, the 12 elder races gathered to discuss matters of galactic importance. They had done this for over 50,000 years. They considered themselves wise. They considered themselves powerful. And they considered humanity to be nothing more than children playing with toys they did not understand. Ambassador Zethral of the Volanthi hegemony stood before the council that day. His body was tall and thin, covered in silver scales that caught the light. His eyes were large and completely black. He held a data crystal in his long fingers and spoke in a voice that sounded like water flowing over stones. The assessment of species 7491, known as humans, is complete, he said. They have achieved basic faster-than-light travel. They have established one colony beyond their home system. Their technology is primitive. Their military capability is insignificant. I recommend we maintain their classification as a Class 7 species and continue observation. The other delegates barely looked up. Humans were not interesting to them. The Volanthi had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. The Gruthaki had built empires that spanned thousands of worlds before humans learned to make fire. To these ancient races, humanity was like an insect crawling on the ground. Not worth their attention. But there was one matter that did require discussion. The Craxian Dominion had declared their intention to expand into the Orion Spur. This region of space was mostly empty, but it contained several small colony worlds. One of those worlds belonged to humans. The Craxian envoy rose to speak. His name was Threxival, and he was terrifying to look at. The Craxians were insectoid creatures with hard black shells and multiple limbs ending in sharp claws. Their faces had no expression that other species could read. Their voices came through translator devices because their natural sounds were beyond the hearing range of most races. The Dominion claims all territory in the designated expansion zone. Threxival announced. The human colony on the world they call Kepler 22b falls within our claim. We will give them 30 standard cycles to evacuate. After that, we will cleanse the planet. High Counselor Metherin of the Silvari Collective raised a delicate hand. The Silvari were beautiful beings with skin like polished wood and hair like flowing leaves. They were known for their wisdom and their peaceful nature. Should we not inform the humans of this development? She asked. It seems only fair to give them proper warning. Threxival made a sound that might have been laughter. Inform them, if you wish. It makes no difference. They cannot stop us. They cannot fight us. They can only run or die. The Council voted to send a formal notice to Earth. The message would explain the situation and advise humanity to accept the loss of their colony. Resistance, the message would say, was not a logical option. The Craxians had conquered 18 species. Their fleet numbered in the tens of thousands. Fighting them would be suicide. The message traveled across the vast emptiness of space and arrived at Earth 3 days. Later, Admiral Daniel Carter was sitting in his office at the United Earth Defense Command in Houston when his communication officer brought him the transmission. Daniel was 52 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many hard decisions. He had served in the Navy for 30 years, first on the oceans and then in space. He had helped build humanity's small fleet of 7 combat vessels. He knew better than anyone how limited their military power was. He read the message twice. Then he read it a third time. His hands did not shake, but something cold settled in his chest. The colony on Kepler 22b was home to 40,000 people. Families, children, scientists and farmers and teachers and engineers. They had left Earth to build a new life among the stars. They had worked hard for 20 years to make that distant world their home. And now an alien empire wanted to take it from them. Daniel picked up his secure communication device and called Secretary General Laura Bennett at the United Nations Space Authority. Laura was 60 years old, with white hair and a face lined by years of difficult work. She had spent her entire career trying to unite humanity's fractured nations under a single purpose. The space program had been her greatest achievement. "I assume you have seen the message," Daniel said. Laura nodded slowly. Her expression was calm, but her eyes showed the weight of what she was feeling. "I have called an emergency session. Every major government will be represented within 6 hours. We need to decide how to respond." "The Council expects us to surrender," Daniel said. "They expect us to abandon our people." "Yes," Laura agreed. "That is what they expect." There was a long silence between them. Both of them knew what the logical choice was. Both of them knew what the numbers said. Humanity had 7 warships. The Craxians had thousands. Fighting would mean death. Running would mean survival. But something in the human spirit does not calculate odds the way other species do. Something in the human heart does not accept the idea of leaving people behind. "What do you think we should do?" Laura asked. Daniel looked out his window at the blue sky of Earth. Somewhere out there, beyond that sky, 40,000 humans were waiting to learn their fate. They had trusted their government to protect them. They had trusted their species to stand with them. "I think we fight," Daniel said quietly. "I think we show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens our people. I think we make them understand that humans do not abandon their own." Laura was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Prepare the fleet," she said. "I will handle the politicians. We have a war to fight." When the emergency session convened, the debate was fierce but brief. Some argued for evacuation. Some argued for negotiation. But in the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would not run. Humanity would fight. The formal response was transmitted to the Galactic Council the next day. It invoked an ancient clause in galactic law that permitted any species to defend their territory through military action. It declared that humanity would resist the Craxian invasion with all available force. The message was simple and clear. It said, "We are coming, and we will not stop until our people are safe." Across the galaxy, ancient races read the transmission and shook their heads in disbelief. The humans were marching to war against an enemy that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. It was, they all agreed, the most foolish thing they had ever seen. They did not understand. They could not understand, because they had forgotten what it meant to fight for something more important than survival. But they would learn. Galactic Council Astonished Humanity Marched to War Part 2. The Council's laughter, the great chamber of the Galactic Council, had never been so loud. When humanity's response arrived, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Laughter filled the room. Delegates from a dozen species made sounds of amusement in their own ways. The Volanthi bubbled. The Grothaki slammed their tentacles against tables. Even the normally silent Lithrani flashed patterns of bright colors across their bodies. High Counselor Methrin stood at the central platform and waited for the noise to stop. She held the human transmission in her hands, reading it again as if she could not believe what she was seeing. "They have declared war," she announced when the chamber finally grew quiet. "The humans have formally invoked the right of defense under Section 447 of the Galactic Compact. They are claiming the right to defend their colony through military action." Ambassador Zethral rose from his seat. His silver scales reflected the lights of the chamber as he spread his hands in a gesture of confusion. "Do they understand what they are doing?" he asked. "Have they lost their minds? They have 7 combat vessels. The Craxian Dominion has 7,000 in this sector alone. This is not a war. This is a species choosing to end itself. The Craxian envoy Threxival made no sound. His multiple eyes watched the proceedings with cold interest. When he finally spoke, his translator rendered his words in flat, emotionless tones. "The Dominion accepts their declaration," he said. "We will honor the formalities of war. We will give them the death they have chosen. This matter will be resolved within one standard cycle." Councillor Methrin raised her hand for attention. "Perhaps we should send a delegation to speak with them directly. They are a young species. Perhaps they do not fully understand the situation." Several delegates murmured in agreement. It seemed like the kind thing to do. Even if humans were foolish, there was no honor in watching them march to extinction. Without at least trying to explain their mistake, the council decided to summon humanity's representative for a formal audience. Captain Megan Harris received the summons while stationed aboard the diplomatic vessel Horizon, humanity's only ship in the neutral zone near Council space. She was 34 years old, with brown hair tied back in a practical bun and eyes that missed nothing. She had been a fighter pilot before becoming a diplomat, and she still moved with the careful precision of someone trained for combat. When she walked into the council chamber, she felt the weight of 100 alien eyes upon her. Some looked at her with pity. Some looked at her with amusement. None of them looked at her with respect. Councillor Methrin spoke first. Her voice was gentle, like a parent speaking to a confused child. "Captain Harris, thank you for coming. The council wished to speak with you before events proceed further. We want to make sure your species understands what it has done." Megan stood straight and kept her expression neutral. "We understand perfectly, Counselor. Do you?" Ambassador Zethrol leaned forward. "Your species has existed for 200,000 years. You have been in space for less than 2 centuries. The Craxians have been waging interstellar war since before your ancestors discovered fire. Their empire spans 3,000 worlds. Their soldiers are bred from birth for combat. Their weapons technology is 600 years more advanced than yours." "We are aware of their capabilities," Megan replied calmly. "Then why?" Councillor Methrin asked. There was genuine confusion in her voice. "Why would you choose to fight a battle you cannot win? Why would you sacrifice your species for a single colony?" Megan was quiet for a moment. She looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. These were the elder races of the galaxy. They had lived for millions of years. They had built civilizations that spanned the stars. They had accumulated wisdom beyond human understanding, and yet they did not understand the simplest thing about humanity. "May I ask you a question, Counselor?" Megan said. Methrin nodded slowly. "How many of your people live on that colony world in the Orion Spur? The one the Craxians destroyed 3 cycles ago?" The chamber went silent. Methrin's expression changed, becoming harder to read. "That was different," she said quietly. "The cost of resistance was too high. We made the logical choice." "You abandoned them," Megan said. Her voice was not angry. It was simply stating a fact. "You calculated the odds and decided your people were not worth fighting for. That is your way. It is not ours." Ambassador Zethrol made a sound of irritation. "You speak of honor and courage as if they matter more than survival. They do not. When your fleet is destroyed and your colony is burned, what will your courage have accomplished?" Megan smiled. It was a small smile, but it was genuine. "I do not know," she admitted. "But I know that 40,000 humans are waiting on that colony right now. They are scared. They are far from home. And they are looking up at the stars wondering if anyone will come to help them." She paused. "We are coming. Whatever it costs, we are coming. Because that is what humans do." Threxival spoke again, his translator buzzing with each word. Your sentiment is meaningless. You will die. Your colony will die. And the galaxy will forget your species ever existed. Megan turned to face the Craxian directly. She did not flinch from his terrible appearance. She did not look away from his cold, insect eyes. Perhaps, she said, but we will not forget. And neither will you. Because even if we lose, you will remember the day a young species stood against your mighty empire and refused to kneel. You will remember that humans chose death over surrender. And every time you conquer another world, you will wonder if the people there will fight like we did. She straightened her uniform and prepared to leave. We have nothing more to discuss. The United Earth Defense Fleet is already on its way to Kepler 22b. We will meet your forces there. And whatever happens next, the galaxy will see what humanity is made of. The council chamber remained silent long after she left. The delegates looked at each other with expressions of confusion and unease. Something in the human captain's words had disturbed them. Something they could not quite identify. High Counselor Methrin was the first to speak. Record this session, she said slowly. Something tells me we will want to remember it. Ambassador Zethral shook his head. You are being dramatic, Counselor. They are simply a young species making a foolish mistake. We have seen it before. We will see it again. But even as he spoke, there was a small seed of doubt in his mind. The human had looked at the assembled might of the galaxy's greatest civilizations and had not been afraid. She had looked at certain death and had smiled. That was not the behavior of a foolish species. That was the behavior of something else entirely. The Craxian fleet departed 3 days later. 3,000 warships carrying millions of soldiers. They expected an easy victory. They expected to crush the human resistance in hours. They did not know what was waiting for them, but they would learn. The whole galaxy would learn. Humanity was coming to war. Galactic Council Astonished Humanity March to War Part 3. The Gathering Storm. Something strange was happening on Earth. The news of the coming war had spread across the planet within hours. Every screen, every broadcast, every communication channel carried the same message. An alien empire was coming to destroy humanity's colony. The Galactic Council expected humans to surrender. Instead, they had chosen to fight. Admiral Daniel Carter watched from his command center as the world transformed before his eyes. Nations that had argued for centuries suddenly stopped arguing. Political leaders who had refused to cooperate suddenly found common ground. Within 72 hours, every spacefaring country on Earth had placed their vessels under a single command structure. The United Earth Defense Fleet was born. It was a small fleet. 7 combat vessels, 12 support ships, a handful of transport craft. Against the Craxian armada, it looked like a child's toys scattered on a table. But it was everything humanity had, and they would use every piece of it. Daniel stood in the planning room surrounded by his senior officers. Commander Kevin Walsh was there, a former test pilot with quick hands and quicker reflexes. He would lead the fighter squadrons. Lieutenant Commander Nicole Grant stood beside him, a ground combat specialist who had been preparing the colony's defenses. Chief Engineer Patrick O'Brien was already covered in grease and working on plans to upgrade every weapon system they had. What do we know about their tactics? Daniel asked. Kevin pulled up a holographic display. It showed recordings of previous Craxian invasions, gathered from whatever sources humanity could find. They use overwhelming force, Kevin explained. They drop out of faster-than-light travel, establish a perimeter, and advance information. Their fighters are fast but not maneuverable. Their capital ships rely on heavy shielding rather than speed. They expect their enemies to run or surrender. When they encounter resistance, they simply add more ships until the resistance breaks. Daniel studied the images. What are their weaknesses? They have never fought an enemy willing to die, Kevin said. Every species they have conquered tried to survive. They negotiated. They retreated. They surrendered. The Craxians have no tactics for dealing with an enemy that does not care about survival. Nicole stepped forward. I have been working with Governor Ryan Mitchell on the colony. The settlers have refused evacuation. Every single one of them. They are building defensive positions around the settlements. They have converted mining equipment into weapons. They are ready to fight on the ground if the Craxians make it past our fleet. Daniel felt something warm in his chest. Pride. These were his people. These were humans. They did not know how to give up. What about reinforcements? He asked. Is there anything else we can send? Patrick O'Brien scratched his chin. We have every shipyard on Earth working around the clock. Private companies have converted their production lines to military manufacturing. We will not have new warships in time, but we can have more fighters. We can have more missiles. We can have orbital defense platforms. How many? If we work without stopping, we can have 36 orbital platforms around the colony before the Craxians arrive. Each one carries nuclear warheads and kinetic impactors. Daniel nodded. It was not much, but it was something. The door opened and a young woman entered the room. She was Dr. Samantha Liu, head of the Advanced Research Division at Fermilab. She was small and quiet, with glasses that always seemed to be sliding down her nose. But her mind was one of the sharpest on Earth. I have something, she said without introduction. Something that might help. She placed the device on the table. It was small, no bigger than a football, covered in wires and blinking lights. It looked like something a student might build in a garage. What is it? Daniel asked. We have been working on faster-than-light communication for years, Samantha explained. We never achieved stable transmission, but we discovered something interesting in the process. We can disrupt faster-than-light travel. This device creates a field that prevents ships from entering or exiting hyperspace. The room went silent. Everyone understood what this meant. You can trap them, Kevin said slowly. If they cannot retreat to hyperspace, they cannot escape. Samantha nodded. The field is unstable. Each device can only be used once before it burns out, and the range is limited. But if we place these devices correctly, we can prevent their ships from retreating when the battle turns against them. Daniel picked up the device and turned it over in his hands. It was rough and primitive compared to the technology of the elder races. But it was human. It was theirs. How many can you make? 12, Samantha said. Maybe 15 if we push the limits. Make 20, Daniel ordered. Whatever resources you need, you have them. The preparations continued for weeks. Ships were loaded with weapons. Crews were trained beyond exhaustion. Plans were made and remade 100 times. Every possible scenario was analyzed. Every possible tactic was considered. On Kepler 2-2b, Governor Ryan Mitchell addressed his people in the central square of the colony's main settlement. He was a tall man with tired eyes and hands roughened by years of farming alien soil. I am not going to lie to you, he said. The enemy coming for us is powerful. They have destroyed civilizations older than our entire species. They expect us to run. They expect us to beg for mercy. He paused and looked at the faces around him. But I have seen what you have built here. I have seen you turn a dead world into a home. I have seen you raise children and plant crops and build something beautiful from nothing. And I know that you will not let anyone take that away from you. The crowd was silent. Men and women, young and old, scientists and farmers, all of them standing together under an alien sky. The fleet is coming, Ryan continued. Admiral Carter is bringing everything humanity has. And when the Craxians arrive, they will find not a weak colony waiting to die. They will find humans. They will find us. And they will learn what happens when you threaten our home." A cheer rose from the crowd. It was not a loud cheer. It was the sound of quiet determination. The sound of people who had made peace with fear and found something stronger on the other side. Back on Earth, Admiral Daniel Carter boarded his flagship, the carrier Endurance. It was not the largest ship humanity had ever built, but it was the best. As he walked through the corridors, he saw the faces of his crew. Young men and women who had volunteered for a mission that might kill them all. None of them looked afraid. All of them looked ready. The fleet departed Earth orbit 3 days later. 7 warships. 12 support vessels. Thousands of humans heading into the darkness of space to face an enemy they could not defeat. Behind them, the planet they were leaving watched in silence. Billions of people looking up at the stars, knowing that everything depended on what happened next. The Galactic Council had called humanity primitive. They had called them foolish. They had expected them to surrender, but humanity was not surrendering. Humanity was gathering its strength. And when the storm finally broke, the galaxy would see what humans were truly made of. The war was about to begin. Galactic Council astonished humanity marched to War Part 4. The Battle of Kepler 22b. The Craxian Armada dropped out of hyperspace like a swarm of locusts descending on a field. 3,000 warships filled the darkness around Kepler 22b. Their hulls were black and angular, covered in weapons that could burn cities to ash in seconds. Their commanders looked at their sensors and expected to see a planet waiting to die. Instead, they saw something unexpected. The human fleet was arranged in a defensive formation around the colony world. 7 warships positioned at key points. 36 orbital platforms bristling with nuclear warheads. Hundreds of smaller fighters moving in coordinated patterns. And on the planet below, settlements reinforced with defensive positions and weapons. Warlord Rex Tal sat in his command throne aboard the dreadnought Devastation. He was old for a Craxian, his shell scarred from 100 battles. He had conquered 12 worlds personally. He had never lost a single engagement. He studied the human formation with his multiple eyes and felt something he had not felt in many years. Curiosity. "They actually came," he said to his officers. "They actually brought their entire fleet to face us." His second-in-command clicked his mandibles. "They are insects, Warlord. We will crush them in minutes." Rextal was not so sure. Something about the way the humans had positioned themselves bothered him. They were not defending randomly. They had studied Craxian tactics. They knew where the attack would come from. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Let us give them one chance to flee." Admiral Daniel Carter received the transmission on the bridge of the Endurance. He looked at the holographic image of the Craxian warlord and felt no fear. Only calm determination. "Human commander," Rextal said, "you have fought well simply by coming here. But this battle is already lost. Withdraw your ships, and we will allow your people to evacuate the colony. Continue to resist, and you will all die." Daniel leaned forward in his chair. "This is Admiral Daniel Carter of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You are entering human space. We will defend our people with everything we have. Turn back now, or face the consequences." Rexdale made a sound that might have been laughter. "Consequences? You have 7 ships. I have 3,000. What consequences could you possibly deliver?" Daniel smiled. "You are about to find out." He cut the communication and turned to his bridge crew. "All ships, prepare for combat. Fighter squadrons, launch on my signal. Let's show them what humans can do." The battle began. Commander Kevin Walsh led the first wave of fighters directly into the heart of the Craxian formation. His pilots were young and terrified, but they flew with precision that shocked the enemy. Human fighters were small and primitive compared to Craxian craft. but they were nimble. They darted between the massive warships like wasps attacking a bear. "Stay tight," Kevin ordered through his communication system. "Draw their fire. Make them chase us. The more attention we get, the more time the heavy ships have to position." Craxian fighters swarmed to intercept them. Energy beams filled the space around Kevin's squadron. He lost 3 pilots in the first minute, then 5 more. But the survivors kept flying, kept fighting, kept refusing to retreat. The Craxian commanders had never seen anything like it. Their tactical programs predicted that enemy forces would withdraw after losing 10% of their strength. Human forces had lost 30% and were still attacking. Their algorithms could not understand fighters that accelerated toward danger instead of away from it. On the orbital platforms, Lieutenant Commander Nicole Grant coordinated the defensive fire. Nuclear warheads launched in carefully planned sequences. Kinetic impactors accelerated to incredible speeds and slammed into Craxian vessels. Each hit did damage. Each damaged ship was one less enemy to fight. "Keep firing," Nicole ordered. "Don't give them time to recover. Make them pay for every meter they advance." The Craxians pushed forward through the defensive fire. Their shields absorbed most of the damage. Their numbers were simply too great to stop. But they were taking losses. More losses than they had expected. More losses than they had ever taken against a primitive species. Warlord Rextol watched the battle unfold with growing unease. His ships were winning, but the cost was higher than it should be. The humans fought like creatures possessed. When their ships were damaged beyond repair, they did not surrender. They accelerated toward Craxian vessels and detonated their reactors. 3 human destroyers had already sacrificed themselves in this way. Each one had taken a Craxian cruiser with it. This was not in any tactical manual. This was not how wars were fought. "They are insane," his second-in-command said. "They are throwing their lives away." Rextol said nothing. He was beginning to understand something about humans. Something that made him uncomfortable. The battle raged for hours. The human fleet was being destroyed, but they were not dying quietly. Every ship that fell took enemies with it. Every fighter that was shot down had damaged something first. The Craxians had lost over 200 vessels. Against any other species, they would have lost none. Then Dr. Samantha Liu's devices activated. The disruption fields expanded across the battlefield in perfect coordination. 15 zones where faster than light travel became impossible. The Craxian fleet, which had been preparing to rotate fresh ships into the battle, suddenly found itself trapped. "Warlord," an officer reported, "our hyperspace drives are offline. We cannot retreat." Rextol stood from his throne. "What?" "The humans have deployed some kind of disruption technology. We are unable to leave the system." For the first time in his long career, Rextol felt something like fear. The humans had not just come to fight. They had come to trap his fleet and make them pay for every moment of the battle. Admiral Carter saw the disruption fields activate and gave his final orders. "All ships, concentrate fire on their command vessels. Focus everything on the dreadnoughts. If we can take out their leadership, the rest will scatter." The remaining human ships surged forward in a desperate attack. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they did not care. Commander Kevin Walsh led his surviving fighters in a direct assault on the devastation itself. His squadron lost half its pilots breaking through the defensive screen, but they reached the dreadnought's hull. Kevin's fighter was hit as he made his final approach. Alarms screamed in his cockpit. His engines were dying. He had seconds left. He did not try to escape. He aimed his damaged craft at the dreadnought S-bridge and accelerated. "Tell my family I love them," he said into his communication system. Then his fighter struck the Devastation's command tower and exploded. Warlord Vrextel died instantly. His second-in-command took over, but the damage was done. The Craxian fleet had lost its leader. Confusion spread through their ranks. Coordinated attacks became disorganized. The battle continued for 3 more hours. When it finally ended, the human fleet was nearly destroyed. Only 2 warships remained operational. Half the orbital platforms were gone. Thousands of humans had died, but the colony still stood. The people on the surface were still alive, and the Craxian fleet, battered and leaderless, finally received orders from their homeworld. They were to retreat. The cost of continuing the battle was too high. The remaining Craxian ships limped out of the system, their hyperspace drives slowly recovering from the disruption. They left behind the wreckage of 400 vessels and the bodies of millions of soldiers. Admiral Daniel Carter stood on the bridge of the Endurance and looked at the destruction around him. His ship was barely functional. His fleet was gone. But through the viewport, he could see the blue-green sphere of Kepler-22b, still whole, still safe. "We did it," his communications officer said quietly. "We actually did it." Daniel nodded slowly. He thought of Kevin Walsh and all the others who had given their lives. He thought of the families who would never see their loved ones again. "Send a message to the colony," he said. "Tell them they are safe. Tell them their defenders did not fail them." He paused and looked out at the stars. "And send a message to Earth. Tell them humanity is still here. Tell them we are still standing." The galaxy had expected humanity to die. Instead, they had done the impossible. They had survived. Galactic Council Astonished Humanity March to War Part 5. A New Reckoning. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species with access to the communication networks heard the impossible story. A primitive species with 7 warships had fought the mighty Craxian Dominion. They had lost most of their fleet. They had lost thousands of their people. But they had also killed a Craxian warlord, destroyed 400 enemy vessels, and saved their colony from destruction. In the great chamber of the Galactic Council on Desser Prime, the elder races sat in stunned silence. High Counselor Methrin read the battle reports again and again, as if the words would change if she looked at them long enough. They did not change. The truth remained the same. Humanity had done the impossible. Ambassador Zethral of the Volanti hegemony was the first to speak. His voice was quiet, stripped of the confidence he usually displayed. "How?" he asked. Their technology was inferior. Their numbers were hopeless. Their ships were practically primitive. How did they do this? No one had an answer. The tactical analysts had studied the battle from every angle. They understood what had happened. They understood the weapons used and the strategies employed. But they could not understand why. They could not understand how a species would sacrifice itself so completely for a single colony. The Craxian envoy was absent from the chamber. The Dominion was in chaos following the loss of Warlord Vrextel. For the first time in recorded history, they had requested an armistice. They had asked for peace. The proud conquerors who had destroyed 18 species had been stopped by a civilization that had been in space for less than 2 centuries. Counselor Methrin sent a formal request to humanity's representative. She needed to understand. The whole council needed to understand. Captain Megan Harris returned to the chamber 3 weeks after the battle. She walked the same path she had walked before, past the same delegates who had laughed at humanity's declaration of war. None of them were laughing now. They watched her with a mixture of fear and respect that had not existed before. She stood before the council and waited for their questions. Methrin spoke first. "Captain Harris, I have studied the battle reports extensively. I understand the tactics your fleet employed. I understand the weapons you used. But I do not understand your people. Help me understand." Megan nodded slowly. She had been expecting this question. She had been thinking about how to answer it since the moment the battle ended. What do you want to know, counselor? Everything, Methrin said. Start with why you did not surrender. Any logical analysis would show that surrender was the only option that preserved the maximum number of lives. Why did you choose to fight? Megan was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. Counselor, may I ask you a question first? Methrin nodded. How many species in this chamber have abandoned colonies to the Craxians? How many of you have calculated the odds and decided that some of your people were not worth saving? The chamber shifted uncomfortably. Several delegates looked away. The answer was obvious. Most of them had made that choice at some point in their history. We thought we were being wise, Ambassador Zethral said quietly. We thought we were being logical. We preserved our civilizations by accepting losses we could not prevent. You were being logical, Megan agreed. But logic is not everything. Humans are not purely logical creatures. We have something else. We have something that tells us certain things are worth dying for, even when the odds say we cannot win. What is that something? Methrin asked. Megan smiled sadly. I do not know if I can explain it in words you will understand, but I will try. She paused to gather her thoughts. When our ancestors lived in caves, they faced dangers every day. Predators, weather, disease. They survived because they worked together, because they protected each other, because they refused to abandon the weak and the vulnerable. She looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. That instinct is still inside us. When someone threatens our people, something ancient wakes up in our hearts. It does not care about logic. It does not care about odds. It only knows one thing: protect the family, protect the tribe, protect our own, even if it means death. Methrin asked. Especially if it means death, Megan replied. Because a species that abandons its own people is already dead in every way that matters. The bodies might still be walking around, but the spirit is gone. Humans would rather die fighting than live knowing we left our people behind. The chamber was silent. The elder races had lived for millions of years. They had accumulated knowledge and power beyond human imagination. But somewhere along the way, they had lost something. They had become so focused on survival that they had forgotten what made survival worthwhile. Megan continued. Your species have been watching us for a century. You called us primitive. You called us children. And maybe you were right. We are young. We make mistakes. We act on emotion instead of logic. She straightened her shoulders. But we also do things your ancient civilizations have forgotten how to do. We hope when there is no reason to hope. We fight when there is no chance of winning. We love so deeply that we would rather die than betray that love. She looked directly at Ambassador Zethral. That is why we did not surrender. Not because we thought we could win, but because surrendering was never an option. Not for us. Not for humans. The silence in the chamber stretched on for a long time. Finally, High Counselor Methrin stood and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the room. The Galactic Council has made a decision. Humanity is hereby elevated from Class 7 to Class 3 status. They will be granted full diplomatic recognition, territorial sovereignty, and trade rights equal to any established species. She paused. Furthermore, I am personally recommending that the Council study human history and culture. I believe we have much to learn from them. Ambassador Zethral rose to second the motion. His voice was different now, stripped of arrogance. I have lived for 3,000 years, he said. I thought I had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. I was wrong. The humans have shown me something I had forgotten. They have shown me what courage looks like, what loyalty looks like, what it means to be willing to sacrifice everything for the people you love. He bowed his head toward Megan. I apologize for underestimating your species, Captain. It will not happen again. The Council voted unanimously in favor of the motion. Back on Earth, Admiral Daniel Carter received the news while standing in a memorial garden dedicated to the fallen. The names of every human who died at the Battle of Kepler-22b were carved into stone walls that surrounded him. Commander Kevin Walsh, Lieutenant Commander Nicole Grant, Chief Engineer Patrick O'Brien, and thousands more. Secretary General Laura Bennett stood beside him. We did it, she said quietly. Against all odds. Against everything the galaxy expected. We did it. Daniel nodded but did not smile. The victory was real, but so was the cost. So many good people had given their lives. What happens now? He asked. Now we rebuild. We grow stronger. We make sure that the next time someone threatens our people, we are ready. Laura looked up at the stars visible in the darkening sky. And we remember. We remember everyone who made this possible. On Kepler-22b, Governor Ryan Mitchell addressed his colony one more time. The settlers had gathered in the same square where he had spoken before the battle. But this time, they were not preparing for death. They were celebrating life. We are still here, Ryan said. His voice was thick with emotion. We are still here because of the bravery of thousands of men and women who gave everything to protect us. We will never forget their sacrifice. We will build monuments in their honor. We will teach our children their names. And we will make sure that their deaths meant something. The crowd cheered. Children waved flags painted with stars and stripes. Families embraced each other. The colony that was supposed to die was alive and growing stronger. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity began watching more carefully. The young race from the small blue planet had announced their presence in the most dramatic way possible. They had stood against an empire. They had lost nearly everything. And they had won anyway. The Galactic Council had learned a valuable lesson. Humanity was not primitive. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was simply different. They were guided by something the elder races had forgotten existed. They were guided by love, by loyalty, by an unbreakable commitment to each other. And that made them more dangerous than any weapon, more powerful than any fleet. The galaxy would never underestimate them again.